going on, friends? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are bringing you a highly requested video. That is the use of the wrist brace. Now, before we dive into the specifics of this particular video, I do need to state that this video is not a promotion of the wrist brace. So there are many reasons why people wear a wrist brace. Number one is it can be used as a training tool, but the two more common is there's a belief that somebody has a weaker wrist and they are using it to help hold them in place. And I'm going to address that here in a minute. The other one is if somebody has an actual injury or pain in their wrist that they're trying to solve. And in some cases, if you do have pain in your wrist, there are also ways of changing your grip that can actually solve that as opposed to using the wrist guard. But in many cases, you may still need to wear it, and that's totally fine. But I do want to address the weaker wrist sort of thing. So oftentimes when you see wrist guards used, you're going to see them used mostly among women or senior bowlers. As they advance in age, maybe their wrist isn't as strong, and so they feel like they can't keep a flat wrist. The wrist ends up breaking back on them. Now, the problem with a wrist brace is that a wrist brace does lock you into position, and while it does keep your wrist from breaking back, it also prevents you from having that fluidity in your wrist, which is needed to get the most out of your ball roll and get the highest rev rate. So if you're good with being a stroker type of bowler, you can wear these, block your wrist in place, and you can actually bowl really well, and we are going to address that in today's video. But if you're trying to get 450 rev rate while wearing one of these, it probably isn't going to happen because you do need that fluidity of your wrist during that release to go from a loaded position to an uncoiled position, so you need that flexion. But again, does that mean that you aren't going to be able to be a great bowler? Absolutely not. There are plenty of bowlers who have used these throughout time, and as long as you understand that your game is going to be more of a stroker style and not a cranker style, then we're going to walk through how you can use this and how you can get the most out of your game while wearing this particular device. Now, I talked about how one of the things is if you feel you have a weak wrist or you feel you've got pain in your wrist, how you can actually do things with your grip and your release to help solve that issue where you may not actually need the wrist guard. A lot of people who feel they have a weaker wrist, the problem is that they are actually trying to curl the ball, whether it's going from a broken back position up into a flat position. They're feeling like they're trying to curl the ball like you would if you're holding a dumbbell and trying to curl it up. However, you don't want to actually curl the ball. If you've got a proper fitting thumb, now we did a video a couple months ago on how having a proper fitting thumb can actually help the ball feel a lot lighter, and you don't have to feel like you're actually curling the ball. The other aspect to it is not just a thumb fit, but it also has to do with your timing and your release. What oftentimes happens is, number one, you may be putting too much weight in that hand from the very beginning, and so you're trying to hold your wrist tight and keep it flat, whereas the gravity wants to pull your wrist back. When you first start out, you want to have more of a distribution into your left hand as well, whether you have the hands on either side of the ball and it's equal distribution, or if you want to have the ball over here more, have your hand a little more under the ball. Your left hand, if you're right-handed, if you're left-handed, everything's just the opposite. So have your left hand under there supporting it, so you are using more weight on your left hand and holding it, so you want your right hand, your right everything to be relaxed. As you begin your push away, your left hand is still bearing a lot of that weight. It is not until you let go that now it is transferring over, but when it transfers over, you want gravity to take over. So if you let gravity take the ball down, it really is somewhat weightless. Okay, gravity is wanting to pull the ball straight down, and the only thing your hand is doing is your hand is guiding it onto the plane. So instead of going straight down, as gravity wants to do, you're going to push away and let gravity go down, and your hand is just simply going to guide that ball on the path. And your thumb, if you have a very snug fitting thumb, is going to do most of that work. The ball is going to want to roll off of your hand, and your thumb, being very snugly fit, is going to keep it from rolling off of your hand. So you're going to have a nice snug thumb, and it's actually going to feel more like it's pulling on your thumb than it is wanting to bend your wrist back. If you feel like when you push away and you start to let go, it feels like it wants to pull your wrist back, it is likely because you are not letting gravity take the ball. You are either pulling it or you're doing the opposite, and you're actually trying to hold the ball up and fighting against gravity. So gravity wants to take it at a certain speed and you want to slow it down. The natural tendency is going to be for that wrist to break back, and it comes back. The most common culprit is likely still going to be that thumb fit though, because I see a lot of people who grab an alley ball that doesn't fit them. So they go up there and they come up here and it comes back and immediately their wrist breaks back because that thumb does not fit properly. So if you get a proper fitting thumb and you get that timing down, you're never pulling the ball, letting gravity do its job. And if you do that, you can maintain a straight wrist. So those may be some of the things that you're running into, is you are either putting too much weight on that hand, your timing is off, and so you're actually going slower or faster than what gravity is wanting to take the ball, or your thumb may not be fitting, or a combination of all of these things. So one of the things that you can do is make sure you get a proper fitting thumb. Go up there, do some no-step and one-step drills, and make sure you're feeling the ball pull yourself back, and see if you can't maintain a more flat wrist throughout the process without having to feel like you're curling the ball and without needing to use a wrist brace. Now, all that said, we're here to talk about the wrist brace. So if you want to or feel you need to still use a wrist brace, no problem. We're going to walk through how you should be releasing the ball with the wrist brace. And I'm going to be talking about the different ways and different positions you can put the wrist brace in and what your hand should be doing. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to talk about the types of wrist braces. Now there's typically really probably two types. Number one is going to be the old leather style, or some of those that are more of a nylon, but they typically have either a piece of metal or a piece of plastic both on the back side of the wrist and usually on the front side or palm side of the wrist as well. Those two firm pieces are going to be what holds your wrist in a flat position. Those are not adjustable. Those are just going to keep you locked in this position consistently. I personally don't like those only because if it does have that piece on the palm side, it's thick enough to where it feels like the ball's too far away from my hand, and I don't like the feel of it, but that's just me personally. Other people may like those, and that's totally fine. Now the other kind are these hard plastic mechanical robo arms, okay? Now there's a few different styles of these. We've got one that we use just as a training guide for the high school team, and it actually has a lever here that locks and goes into these holes, and so you can have it in a flat position and lock it. You can put it in a slightly bent position and lock it. You can put it in a very bent position and lock it. Wherever you put it, it's going to lock it. This one is a little bit different. I borrowed this one from a friend of mine. This one, it doesn't have a lock as much as it has a stop. So this one, I push this little guide up here, and there's this lever right here. This little lever is going to tell you how much it's going to stop it by, and then there's this other lever here on the back of the wrist, which if I put that here, if it's fully engaged, you can see it's going to stop in a very cupped position. I can shorten this some, and now it's going to be a little bit less. It's going to be slightly flexed, or I can bring it more flat, and it's in more of a flat position is where the stop is. Now, this particular one still has flexion this way, but the flexion this way isn't going to do you any good, because the whole point when we talk about the loading, you have to be able to also uncoil. And so going from a slightly bent position in that loaded position to uncoiling, you're going to be in a released position or a broken back position. So you need to have that mobility. Just going from here to here doesn't really offer you very much. And chances are, if you have it in a flat position and you have the ability to bend your wrist and come up in this position, then strength probably isn't your issue, and you probably don't really need this anyways. All it's doing is keeping you from breaking back. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you the different positions. I don't wear one of these typically, so this is going to look incredibly funky, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in various positions, and I'm going to do various things with my release and show you. I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig and show you what actually happens when you have it in various positions and when you do various things with your hand. When it comes to determining whether or not we're getting the proper type of rotation on the ball, you want to think about axis tilt and rotation, and there's a lot of videos out there that talk about axis tilt and rotation, and we may be doing another video that dives into it a lot deeper. But to start just with this example, I've got this ball here. This is my Venom Shock, and I wrapped it in tape all the way around the circumference, and I added a spot that is the axis. So this is where it's actually rotating. This is going to help show you that angle of rotation. This is going to kind of show you that axis tilt, and what you're going for is obviously if your thumb is in a 12 o'clock position, your fingers in a 6 o'clock position, you come straight up behind the ball, obviously what you're going to see is you're going to see the ball rolling down in this sort of rotation, straight up the back, and the axis point that you see over here is straight out to the side of the ball. That's going to get the ball to roll end over end. Now the Flip side to that is if you suitcase the ball or have your hand completely on the side of the ball, or handshake. A lot of people talk about go out there and shake hands with the lanes. Your hand is coming out much more on the side of the ball, so now you're going to get closer to a 90-degree rotation, and you're going to see that axis point more facing towards you. Now, one of the things that can happen when your hand is completely on the side of the ball is, depending on when the thumb is coming out and how strong your fingers are through your follow through, it actually may cause it to come out of your hand, and it's going to give you a little bit of an axis tilt like this, and it's going to cause the ball to have a spinning motion. So when you see the ball spinning down there, it might have a slight rotation, but it's going to be somewhat like that and spin down the lanes. And those are hard to control, and you're not going to get a lot of action. You will get the ball to move from right to left, but not a ton of action. What we really want to try to achieve is somewhere in between. So we're looking for more of a, anywhere from maybe 20 to 45 degrees. And then we want to have at least a little bit of tilt. Now, the amount of tilt that you have is going to vary based on hand position and who you are. And there isn't a golden rule on exactly what it should be. But you do want to have somewhat of an angle of rotation and a little bit of tilt. And to get that, we want to achieve more of a 45-degree release off of our hand, especially when you don't have the ability to have that fluidity of your wrist. So this is what we're going for in the look of the ball. So keep this in mind. The ball that I'm going to be throwing, I don't have this tape around it, but I do have this piece of tape on it. And we're going to be looking for, is that tape here? Is that tape over here? Is that tape here? Is it angled way up here? Is it angled way down here? Where is the tape as I throw the ball? And we want to achieve the maximum look, which is to have it kind of at a little bit tilted up and at a 45-degree angle this way from the foul line. So now that we know what we want the ball to look like, let's put this wrist guard on. I'm going to start by putting this. I don't know how each of you are using your wrist brace, so I'm going to show all of the different examples. I'm going to start with it in the maximum cupped position, locked in here. Now, it's not, as I said, I still have a little bit of motion, but it is keeping me in that cup position. The problem with being locked in this cup position is that, yes, your hand is farther under the ball, but as you come through, your fingers are in the way. The whole thing about being able to uncoil is you're getting that ball rolling off of your hand. I can't do that here because my wrist is locked, so the ball actually has to come up over my fingers, and it is going to fight against the roll, and it is going to come out completely funky. So for this first shot, this feels horrible, by the way, and it's going to look terrible because I don't normally do this, but I am going to try to throw the ball as normal as I can. So I'm not going to do anything weird with my hands. I'm going to try to have a very normal release, but you're going to see what happens. Don't pay attention to where the ball goes, or I want you to see what the ball is doing, and watch. Again, I've got that piece of tape on the side of the ball. Let's watch what that piece of tape is doing. Let me put this into a level position. Okay, so now I'm in a level position. Okay, yes, I still have flexion. I'm going to do the best I can to not flex my wrist back forward like this at all. Try to keep it very much in this position, which is what most of you are probably in the wrist brace that you've got, whether it's this kind or the leather or nylon kind that's got the metal and plastic on each kind. Now, what I want to do here is, I'm not going to do the first one, but the first one is that obviously if I come straight up through the ball, fingers, thumb pointing at 12, fingers at 6 o'clock, come straight at the ball, it's going to roll it end over end. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that. Now, I talked about what if your hand is completely on the side of the ball? What if you are suitcasing it or hand shaking with the lanes? So, keeping my wrist very flat, locked flat, I'm going to be very much on the side of the ball, suitcasing it the whole way. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that little axis spot that I had was a little too far straight in front of me and was up a little bit, so it was a little bit of a spinner. I'm gonna do it one more time. Side of the ball. It's a little too much on the side. So the next angle then is, instead of being on the side of the ball, don't want to be straight behind, don't want to be at thumb pointing at 9 o'clock, let's go more 10 or 11 o'clock, more of a 45-degree angle. And for the sake of this example, I want to try to keep it at this angle the whole way through. So I'm not going to open up and come back to it because I don't want to over-exaggerate and end up coming over. So I want to maintain that 45-degree angle. What you can see out of that one is that that spot went from being more directly back at me to it was angled a little more. So the angle of rotation went from being completely sideways to being a little more at that 45-degree angle. Again, using this ball as an example, this was the suitcase. This was what I just did, more that 45-degree angle. So the rotation, I'll do it one more time. The rotation is more of what we want. Now that's very much a stroker's release, okay? So, because we're not doing the yo-yo, because I don't have the ability to bring my wrist back at all, I can't uncoil the ball at all, so I'm not getting that, that coiled release, but it's a very nice down and in stroker's release of the ball, and that is going to maximize my hook much more than suitcasing it completely or coming up straight behind the ball. If you're already doing this, if you are a stroker and you're throwing a nice down and ball, you've got good angle of rotation, good axis tilt, and you're simply trying to get more on it, I'm going to show you what most people do incorrectly and show you what you can do. Now, again, you're not going to get to 450 revs because you don't have that ability to uncoil, but let's talk about what people do. A lot of times what people are doing is they want to end up here, but they try to get their hand, they hear about getting your hand inside the ball, getting your hand, opening your shoulders more, getting inside the ball, which is great, but you're wanting to, on the typical release, uncoil, and you can't. So what happens is you end up coming over top of the ball. So that's like what happens if I come around and go over top of the ball some. There, that's what I wanted to see. I came over the top of the ball. Forget about the fact I went in the gutter, but I came around and I got over top of it and that ball spun, okay? That is what a lot of people are struggling with when they're go from a stroker to trying to put more on it. That's what they end up doing. So what do you want to do, all right? So we already said you can't flex your wrist and uncoil your wrist, really. You can't do that if you're wearing one of these. You can with your elbow. Now, you have to be a little careful with the elbow because what we don't want is most people are straight and straight back. They just straight back, straight through. That's a stroker style. We don't want you to completely carry the ball either, because if you're carrying the ball, you're going to lose a lot of power. Even if you were to kind of come through at the end and straighten at the end, you can do it, but you really got to get it to be smooth. So what I really want you to think about is that if you are a straight stroker and you're coming back with a straight arm, soon as you get to the peak, the top of your backswing, bring the elbow in just a little bit, okay? Not massive, not this. Bring it in a little bit, and that's gonna get your hand a little farther under the ball, okay? Get that elbow in, and right as you get to the bottom, then you're gonna straighten it through. You're not gonna snap it, you don't wanna pop the elbow, but you're gonna come through and straighten it through. That's gonna help. You're gonna try to keep your wrist at this 45-degree angle, but bringing in that little bit of elbow flexion should allow you to get a little more on the ball. So let's 45-degree angle, and I'm going to focus on bending the elbow just a little bit at the very end. okay? I didn't get that ball out, but that ball had a little bit more revs on it. And I'm gonna walk through each of those throws one more time. Suitcase style, I'm gonna stand with my left foot on 20, aim right up, somewhere around second arrow. Suitcase. Okay. That would have probably been light of the head pin, not even hitting the head pin. Had decent angle rotation, didn't have a ton on it. Go from the suitcase to the 45 degree, okay? Instead of thumb at 9, we're going thumb at 10 or 11. I'm gonna stand in the same spot, standing left foot on 20, throwing probably, I hit at more like 11 or 12 there, so getting the same spot. Okay, that one came up more. I didn't put more on it, the ball just had more overall hook, came up as flat 10, but came up nicely. Now I'm going to go 45 degrees, but I'm going to open and try to get my hand more on the inside of the ball, come through, but then I'm going to come all the way over the top of the ball, which is what, now I'm going to jump a whole 10 left, so I'm going to stand 30, just because I know this thing's going to spin kind of out of control. I mean, that looked like a good shot, but very, very difficult to control that. Now, we're gonna do the 45 degree or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock thumb position, little bit of elbow bend right at when I get to the top, coming in a little bit, elbow bend, and then straightening the elbow as I go through. I'm gonna go in between, stand at 25. Okay, I didn't get that one out nearly as far as the others, but that one looked a lot better as far as the actual ball roll than any of the others did. That's going to be something that if you can start hitting your mark with it, it's going to be a lot more of a controllable type of shot. So as you can see, like I said, I'm not promoting that you wear these, but if you need to, there are things you can do to try to change how you're throwing the ball if you're looking for an improvement. You have to look at what is it that you're currently doing. Are you suitcasing the ball? If you're suitcasing the ball, go back to the basics and come more 45. If you are coming too far up the back of the ball, go back to 45. If you're spinning, if you notice the ball is spinning, okay, you're trying too much to make the ball hook, go back to 45. If you go back to 45, you can get that nice down and in stroker style and do really well. When you've got that down, or if you are currently a down and in, nice 45 degree, good angle on the ball, then you take the steps of trying to increase those revs. You can go from an open position, as long as you don't go all the way over the top, you can go from an open position inside the ball to the 45 degree spot, and as that ball comes off your thumb, it's going to roll nicely. And the times I was trying to come way over the top and spin it and it looked better, it's because I actually wasn't coming all the way over the top. So you can get inside the ball, come up at a 45 and get a decent ball roll, but just make sure you're not coming over the top. The other thing you can try is getting a little bit, just a tiny bit of, when you get to the top, you start to come down, a little bit of elbow bend, and then straightening that as you come through. That's going to help get the fingers a little bit farther underneath the ball as well. So again, you're never going to achieve 450 revs wearing one of these because you're going to be restricted in what you're trying to do, but you can get more revs than what you're currently getting. You can increase your hook if that's what you're looking for. But all this said, if you can even just master the nice down and in stroker style, I know a lot of guys, especially if you're just bowling league shots, that kill it with that. You can average 220, 230 bowling just nice down and in, using the outside part of the lane to let the ball walk in. If you've got good ball roll, good prediction, and you're consistently hitting your mark, picking up your spares, you can average really well. If you want to bowl on the sport shots, you might find some conditions where that's not going to be very conducive for your game, and you want to try to bring in more. So play around with those things, see what works for you, give them a try. Hopefully you found some value out of this. So that's my take on the wrist guards. Hopefully you guys found this beneficial. Hit that like button if you did. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys on the next video.